Hey, Joey, thanks for joining today.
Oh, absolutely, Paul. Great to be here with you.
Absolutely. So we had a good chance to kind of riff a little bit beforehand. So I am excited about the dive in. So, coach, mentor, you're writing a book. You've worked with sales teams, entrepreneurs, and you're a busy man. Do a ton of this type of media from what I gather, as far as communication, podcasting, and you're really out there and doing kind of, I'll just say, kind of the good work out
Thank
there.
you.
And
I love that I get to do this. I love the impact I have on people's lives. And man, I'll tell you, when I was in corporate America, up to a VP of sales, if I had to be in the office 2 days in a row after 5 p.m., I was frustrated. I was angry. I felt like I was mistreated and all this stuff.
yeah,
There's times now I'll come in here and I'll start and go through my calls and all the stuff I do with clients and stuff. And then I'll come back in the evening, like 8, 9 o'clock at night. And the room next to me is where I do shoot video and the green screen and all that stuff. And I'll do that till
yeah.
3:30 in the morning. I'm so excited. I can't go to sleep
Isn't
after.
that incredible? Yeah. I think honestly, to find the fulfillment is some of it is just I've heard you've I'm sure you're well read and you it seems everything I can gather. I don't want to assume anything, but from what I can gather already, you're very well read, you're very well researched, you've been doing this a long time, and some of it is like that progress and the fulfillment. It's just the feeling of fulfillment. I know that for myself, it's not so much about the material value of the outcome for me. It's that process and feeling like I'm making headway, and that's when the creative juices and I'm really feeling like everything's firing. But when you were saying that, man, you lit up. You're like, I'm in the office whenever I want, and then I'm in the studio and I'm going all, like that's cool, because you're not going to do that if it feels like a grind.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a passion, there's a love, and there's a, I don't want to say ease of process, because what you're doing is not necessarily easy, but it's easy when you're really enjoying it
Yes.
at a
Yes.
deep level.
And that's so important and so crucial. If somebody's on a sales team, somebody's leading a sales team, somebody has their own business, when we lose that fulfillment feeling, when we lose that
Mhm.
excitement and that like spark in it, it can't, it has to drop down.
Yeah.
It's like
And it,
somebody explained to me a long, long time ago, as they said, your life, like the passion you have and the excitement you have towards it. So if it's like a train going uphill, as long as you can spark that and keep that going, that train will keep moving, even if it's inch by inch. But the moment you lose that, that train has to go backwards before it can go forward again.
Oh, I like that. I like that. I've used the, because the storytelling with analogy, metaphor, parables, fables, everything, there's such a strong resonance there. Similar, I would always use kind of like the essence of like if a flower's not growing anymore, it's dying.
Yeah.
And,
I
you're
like
feeding it, there's environment. Yes, there's external environmental changes and influences, but there's that internal as well. And if it's not growing, in some sense, it's kind of dying, you
and
know?
so like this just came in my head, so I'm sorry if to just interject it,
Oh, it's
Paul,
great.
because I want you to lead the direction of this conversation. But think about that. What causes that? People start businesses, they step out on their own, they take huge risks, take bold actions and things like that to start up something that is in their heart. So what, looking at, like, this is one of the things I deal with every day, is, so what is it that steals that spark? What is it that fades that excitement? And it's
Mhm.
a lot of times, as we talk more, it'll make more sense, but it's coming from here because we
Yeah.
get into business and we get the logical mind, we get the A plan, the B plan, we set the goals, we set the recovery plans, the strategies, all that stuff and everything else. And when it doesn't work out, our subconscious programming is programmed that we try harder, that we
Yeah.
put in more hours, that we take
Ah,
more efforts, that and we drive ourselves to the point of burnout where there's just no excitement left for it. And I
yeah,
meet a
absolutely.
lot of people in that area.
Could there be a little window of self sabotage in there, or could there be fear of success? I mean, there's a few different things.
A lot of conditioning that
Yeah.
plays into it and stuff. There's a lot of conditioning that leads us. When I was growing up as a kid, I was talked to and told I was lazy. And I really felt like I was lazy. I went to my early 20s and I was traveling all week trying to build in, just getting into the ground floor of sales and stuff. I was
Mhm.
trying to build something there. I had a family. I was building a house up in Michigan. I was going to school to get my degree. And I thought, I think in my spare time I'll get my pilot's license, and I did.
Nice.
And
I
I
love it.
everybody I hung out with said, "Man, I don't know how you burn the candle at all ends," but I felt like it was necessary for me to prove to myself that I wasn't lazy. It wasn't until
Mm,
decades later when I learned, It never brought the results of fulfillment. It never brought the
Right.
level of sales that I wanted to achieve. It just kept me
So,
going and going and going.
yeah, and I think I've experienced exactly what you're talking about too. And I mean, we're kind of dynamic and complex creatures in some ways, and very simple in others. But some of it, I'm going to go a little bit deep as far as like it could be a sense. There's things that feed into it, senses of survival. Then all of a sudden there's an application of duty, and I'm the dutiful father and the dutiful husband, and I'm just going to show up and I'm going to sit at my desk even if I'm not being productive, if I'm not grinding or I'm not doing. I've fallen into this so many times, and then there's nothing left. There's no more meat on the bone for me for that. For the heart space or the joys of life. It's like I'm going to feel guilty to go have ice cream with my kids. I know that sounds like it's just a simple thing, but I'm like, I feel the calling to go back and, to fulfill those types of the deep needs of whatever that is to fulfill the survival and the successes and all those deep rooted things, touching on the duty of that, because I want to make sure I continue to hand the microphone. I could tell both of you and I could definitely rattle on about a lot of different subjects here. So I'll hand the mic about kind of that duty or deep sense of responsibility and ownership.
Yeah, we take that on. And part of the thing is we try to follow our programming. We try to follow what we were told it means to be a good dad, what we're told it means a good husband and good employee and things like that. And at some point when we start adding more and more and taking more and more efforts and going faster and faster through the process, we cannot cover the ground to meet those. So instead of looking at those things, which will end up bringing balance, looking at each one of those areas and looking at what balance looks like and reprogramming that embedded programming within us, we just keep trying and trying and trying until there's burnout, until there's finally like at some point going, I don't even care. And I talk to a lot of people who have closed their business and there was so much growth potential. But because they were going so fast and furious at it and stuff, it was like they had blinders on and they couldn't see those opportunities. Yeah. So one of the first things I typically do when I start working with somebody is I have to get them to gear back a little bit, to slow down. I do that through developing what the SMT method calls a dynamic vision, where we get into what does that look like that you want to achieve? What's that life you want to live? And start putting some focus on that. Because most people could tell you a dollar number of what they want, right? I talk to a lot of people, they go, I want $10 million. Every single time they say that, Paul, I go, what? Why? Because I never have to worry about money again. So you're trying to use fear as your driver to get you something, and it doesn't work.
Absolutely. Because the fear, then it can turn into controls, scarcity, then limitations. So you start grasping onto other stuff, and then the world starts to shrink. I'll jump in here real quick as far as like I've seen correlations, or this is my interpretation of sometimes when the fear comes in internally in this space, you start to externalize you become resentful of other things external that you can't control outside of your world. But once you're able to kind of change the wording a little bit, maybe slow down and realize strength and internalization of this, or what you have here.
Yes.
The noise tends to kind of on the periphery tends to quiet a little bit, and some of those distractions aren't pulling you as heavy.
Yeah.
And if I may too, I did want to jump back because I did want to ask you about, because we touched on the fear of success, and I don't want to lose that before, because I think that's a big one. And I wanted to kind of run something past you, if I may, with that. And if I'm digressing, please, we can kind of jump back where we're left off here. But I think the fear of success I've heard come up quite a bit with people over time. And I think there's a few different things that I've really kind of dwelled on this. Some of it was like, I was kind of looking at it and I'm like, okay, what is it? Is it a fear of like deep ownership? Like, okay, well, if this happens and I really have to own it, I really have to live it and really have to. So then there's some of that where like, okay, too far. I think at a deep level, sometimes that fear of success can be a shattering of who I am, because if I don't have that today, that means I didn't create it from who I am. I have to create me in the becoming process of this newness of where this new person, this new envisioned life of where the purity and the ease is. The person I am today isn't that person. So sometimes there's a shattering or a loss or a fear of, and then I guess you could I'll go one more and then I'll done with that. I'm like,
of course you will, Paul.
I really enjoy talking because I can tell the energy is there. Yeah. So like, I get excited. So there can be those reflection points of like, well, if I don't have that, if I have to be somebody else, then somehow I failed. It, it's kind of I'm not good enough.
Well,
There's
and
the
you know
self
what?
worth.
There's a lot of not our reality of the life we live is based on our perceptions. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot in what you just said to break down. Our perceptions determine our results.
Okay.
Our perceptions are based on our programming. Within the subconscious mind, there's what I call a motherboard of all of our patterns, paradigms, habits, experiences, even experiences we didn't have, but somebody shared with us and that are now embedded in there. And the important thing about that is that motherboard, that programming is what triggers the brain waves to the actions we take or don't take. So applying it to what you're talking about with being successful. Now you have somebody who's on a pathway, it's starting to happen, and all of a sudden they want to grow it, they want to make it bigger. And that's one of the things I specialize in is helping somebody who has a vision to get to $12 million, go above $22 million in 1 year, and then see that happen. So it's expanding that. But what happens is we get that vision, and then all of a sudden there's fear. The real fear is that we haven't done it before. The real fear is we look at who I am. People look at who they are right here, right now, and they can't see themselves in that vision with the struggles, character traits, whatever it is, and such. And ultimately, what you said is so accurate. Every single person I work with, they become the person in that vision in order to achieve that vision. So they start expanding, and we do that little by little with huge strides as far as results go and such, but we take it step by step through that. So they ultimately become that person of that vision, which really, when you break it down, even though fear is telling us, we have to change it, this and that and everything, ultimately that person in that life is who we want. That's what we want.
Yeah.
So the fear is just kind of like a blocker. Part of the fear is that we haven't done it before. It's just the unknown. After COVID, I decided, like, I love flying. So even when I talk about the pilot's license, man, the little kid, man, I so badly wanted to fly, and then the pilot's license, and I was kind of inside the plane and stuff like that and everything. So it wasn't as exciting as I thought. But over COVID, I decided to go hang gliding, like
No,
get certified for hang gliding.
yeah.
So I have 7 launches off of a 2,000-foot mountaintop. And I went through all the training, and I did this and I did that. And then that first time, though, man, when I lifted that glider up and I was on that cement slope where I got 3 steps and I'm in the air,
Yeah.
everything inside of me said, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And you're
Yeah.
supposed to do a walk, jog, run, but you only have 3 steps. So, you're kind of taking off. With that, though, as I took the first step, man, I could feel my heart beating in my throat. And that's that fear of the unknown. But the moment my feet left the ground, it became like just absolute ecstasy. Like I've never experienced that sensation before. And it was incredible. And that's what's on the other side of our fear.
Yeah. I think that's actually we talked about the train and the flower and things like that. But even that, I've never done the hang gliding, but as that kind of life comparison, the videos I've seen is where you take the steps and then it kind of goes down a little bit if you're coming off of a precipice or you're up high. And so you're almost gliding. And I'm sure some of those fears are setting in that moment, but then I'm sure there's a liftoff point where that kind of takes you.
Absolutely. And that's the same thing. I utilize my experience with Hank the same way with business growth. When we want to grow our business, when we want to create a business, when we want to expand, whatever it is, it's the same thing. So that's why I start right out of the gate with developing what the SMT method calls a dynamic vision, because once we have that, it helps us to go through that fear that is naturally going to come up as we step into new ventures and voyages in our life.
Yeah. So let's kind of jump into that, and then I think that's also an incredible building point too from there. So just to kind of touch on it before jumping in, there's obviously conscious, subconscious, and I'm not sure where you're going to start with it, so I want you to just start wherever it makes sense. And I also like that you talked about the programming, because we are fed, we're born these little babies, and then there's the imposed ideas, there's the cultural, there's the parents, there's the friends, the family, the schools, the works, and everybody's got these collectives, and then there's the collective influences with social media and TV and movies and all this stuff, everything we read, and it can form and shape us to where the externalization is. Because even in consumerism, from a behavioral science capacity, the big things, the motivators are the self, the other, and then systems, some type of systemization or systems within systems, everything from the banking systems to the body systems. So we're looking for all these accelerators. We're looking for the things that are motivating us, the external and the systemization in there. The reason I like that is because we in some old programs too, ancestral programs and antiquated programs, and coming in. So guilt show up and everything else. You had said it beautifully where initiants can come in based on how our responses are based on the programs we're influenced is a real powerful baseline to kind of build from. So I definitely want to hand the mic. I really wanted to lead that up though, because I think you have a lot of great knowledge in this arena.
And I'll kind of back up a little bit. The reason I started all of this stuff is, I grew up in a very low income family in Detroit, Michigan, and I watched my parents just struggle and beat themselves up health wise and anxiety and things like that and stuff. I remember, like, as a young kid, 8, 9, 10 years old, whatever it was, thinking, man, I'm not going to live like you guys do.
Yeah.
But then I found myself in my 20s and something would come along and I wouldn't have to really super effort it and things like that. And there was a feeling inside of me that said, I don't deserve that because I didn't work hard enough for it. And I would pass on it because of that. And I started noticing some of the same struggles I saw my parents struggling with and things like that. And as bad as I didn't want to do that, I did it. And so I started diving into all this stuff at 22 years old, really trying to understand and fix my own life from being miserable. And through that process, I've tried a lot of different things. I've invested in a lot of different programs. I've done a lot, self-study, things like that. I would take a book and read it through, and then I'd read it a second time and create experiments out of it and really dive into it. And I would do these things and I would go through these programs and I would apply everything I had to it, and I'd walk away without the results that I promised. And I would think, man, there must be something the matter with me. So I kept embedding that. So here's the SMT method is a very unique tool in the fact that it's not a one size fit all. You do what I did and get what I got and things like that, because that never really works anyway. It's really based on the individual, the uniqueness of every individual that ventures down the pathway of it. Yeah. It's unique and specific to their desires, what they want to experience in their life. It's specific to their programming. And I'll give you an example. I have 4 siblings. Whenever we talk about the camping stories or things when we were kids and start bringing those up, there's 5 versions of that story because we all have different programming. And so the SMT method, which stands for subconscious mindset training, works off of what we already know about neuroplasticity of the brain, things like that and everything. We know the conscious mind, what we focus on, the words we use, thoughts we entertain, people we hang out with, what we watch on TV, what we read, all of that stuff. But also in that conscious mind is the knowing of what we want. And then we have the subconscious mind with that motherboard that hosts all of our programming of how we grew up, where we grew up, all of that, the schools we went to, all the way through our current life. Right now, you and I are creating programming. People listening to this are getting adjustments to that programming within them. And what happens is we are so pushed into living robotically.
Yeah.
If you want something, find someone who has what you want, do what they did, and you'll get it. That never works.
Yeah, never does.
We see these things on social media and stuff that talk about, we have your roadmap to success. My first thought is, you don't even know my name.
Yeah.
But you have my roadmap. You know nothing about me, but you have my roadmap. The SMT works off of the uniqueness of every individual. And we come out of the gate, what I said, developing that vision. So we have the conscious mind of our knowing. We have the subconscious mind that triggers the brain waves to the actions we take or don't take. That's highly dependent upon that programming. The voice we hear in our head comes from that program, what's in that programming. So what happens is we have the knowing of what we want, but we have a offset of the actions we're taking that are not leading to what we want. And so what the SMT method does in essence is it takes the knowing, the vision, what we want, and it brings alignment between the actions we're taking and what we desire. And you start seeing rapid growth in there. But the key to all of it is it's based on the uniqueness of every individual. So once we get the vision in it, then we start stepping into developing systems of accelerating habits. They're
Hmm.
unique to the individual, not
Yeah.
a list of here's what you do A, B, and C, and you're going to get D. It's okay. What lights you up? What triggers you? You know what? And a good instance for that, Paul, is if you look at social media posts and you can tell the person who's speaking live does not want to be doing what they're doing. I feel bad
Right.
for that person. Like, I
Yeah.
don't watch it very long. And then you see somebody doing social media and they're in their wheelhouse, man. They're lit up. They're excited. They're on fire.
Yeah.
The words are making sense. They're almost pulling you in just by their energy of it and stuff. So, what I do is find what that is for the individuals that I work with. And we start setting habits up around that. So they're doing things that they enjoy doing. Like when I talked about going in the room next to me here and doing, in the studio for
Yeah.
hours. They're doing things that ignite them, they're doing things that excite them. And when we do that, we start automatically opening up the attraction factors to start bringing opportunities to us rather than having to go, hunt them down and do all that, tackle them and everything else to capture them.
Yeah. Man, that's beautiful, dude. I can't. There's a lot there. So, I mean, one thing I want to just kind of confirm, just reiterate with you. I really like that you said that it's not a one fit for all because there's. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that the proverbial road to. Then it's like you'll get like download my ebook and it's just this ebook and it's just like it's a bunch of steps and it just feels. I don't want to say I'm being a little dramatic by saying it feels like an insult, but I think there's a level of it feels like an insult to me personally. It's just like I'm not it's missing. So I do love that it's centric on the fingerprint that we are.
Yes.
That's I kind of really believe that we're all on our own soul's journey, our journey of mastery, but it's unique to us, and to be able to strengthen and feed and support that is that's it. I mean, that's the essence of what we're doing, and to some degree why we're here through this life experience.
Yes, absolutely. I have a good example. It'll take a few minutes to share it and stuff, but I have a.
Please,
So
yeah,
I had a client I was working with. It's probably been about 4, maybe 5 years ago now, and I met this guy and talking to him and things like that. I talked to him for maybe 10 minutes initially, and I was like, man, this guy is just like, he's kind of a mediocre person. Like everything is just okay. He's
sure,
married. He's got kids. He's got a job. A career and things like that. He was a musician even, and everything he talked about was just okay. So through more conversation, we ended up working together. And in probably, I think it was the third or fourth week we were working, it came out. This guy in the fifth grade, he started a brand new school he'd never been to before. Part of the thing he had to do was assessment testing before he would start the school year. So the first day, brand new school, he knows nobody. Bell rings, he goes into the principal's office. Everybody goes to class, he goes to the principal's office. And his principal pulls up his results. He goes, wow, look at this. Fifth grade, your eighth grade reading, your college mathematics. And he was just like off the charts with how smart he was. And the principal said, I'm really glad to have you here. And he said, take this, go to classroom so and so, give it to your teacher. So he went down, he gave it, walked. Now he's got to interrupt the classroom in the fifth grade. He knows nobody, so you can, feel like I always, whenever share this, I feel the uncomfortableness of that.
absolutely,
No one was
yeah,
like in fifth grade. And he walks in and he gives the paper to the teacher. And instead of him sitting down, he's standing, he's just standing there waiting. And then, she looks through it and then she goes, oh, wow, look at so and so. He's in the eighth grade reading. He's in college mathematics and went all the way down the list and started berating this child in front of his classroom of these kids he's never met before.
oh my god,
She ends the whole thing with, well, I guess you should be teaching this class. And the whole classroom laughs. She
wow,
sends him to his seat and he goes and sits down. And he spent that entire first year at that school being picked on, ridiculed, and bullied because of how smart he was.
oh my god.
In that little boy's mind, he made a promise he would not let anybody ever see that again.
Yeah, I'm sure he bottled it up. He hid it, he sheltered it, he protected it, and built walls around it, and
Paul,
that's incredible.
I met this gentleman at 52 years old, and he still was living by that.
Absolutely.
And so we started, perception shifting and things like that because, our programming determines our perceptions determine our results. So if we want different results, we got to go back to the programming. And this guy would call me like twice a week outside of our scheduled call to tell me about a breakthrough he'd have at work or a breakthrough with his kids. He called me one day, it was Thursday night, I'll never forget. He called me up and he goes, "Hey, I just got to share this." And I go, "Roll, baby, roll," because it just lit me up hearing it. And he said, "My wife came in the room, he was in the front room, and his wife came in the room and she told him all the things they were going to do that weekend." And he goes, "No, I don't want to do that." And he said, and it was unusual. It was out of character for him to say that because he was this passive husband. And so she just looked at him and he said, "Joseph, like I had the fear of God in me when she looked at me." All he could do was explain, "I was hoping we could do this sometime in the weekend as a family." And he said she just stared at him and stared at him. And finally she said, "That was so hot." And this guy, within the time we worked together, 6 months, I think we worked together, this guy ended up with his marriage, like owning
Yeah.
his strength, owning being deserving, ultimately being proud of how smart he was. Within that 6 month period, this guy went from barely getting by at work to now they were utilizing him when they bring new people in for them to spend time with him, specifically one-on-one coaching and training them to get them
Yeah.
geared up to get up that ladder and stuff. And his relationship with his kids grew, like everything. Like that's what's possible on the
Isn't
other
that
side of
incredible?
our programming.
Yeah. There's things of living within your innate superpowers. And when you're in that, the people around you, the people that love you, they want you to be in that. They want you to be in that space.
Oh yeah,
And that's incredible. I love that.
yeah.
I love that story. So there was one other thing, well, a couple other things, but one then that came to mind when you were kind of talking about the SMT too, or the SMT. I was kind of thinking of like, there's something I'll talk about too sometimes where it's kind of like playing not to lose, let's just, imaginary line. It's not really a line, but we'll just call it imaginary line. There's kind of playing below the bar, just not to lose and then playing to win. And you're going to show up completely different in your mindset, your heart space, and into the world
Yes.
when you're kind of just like, and you kind of described that guy, and it made me kind of feel that just playing not to lose. Like I'm just going to hide this, and it's going to get by. It's just okay. I'm just going to show up. I'm just going to, and I'm saying those words intentionally. Just going to. I'm just, instead of like that kind of like, well, I get to express my intelligence. I get to experience these things, and there's just such a different showing up
Yeah.
in those arenas.
And when I'm working with clients, and I've gone through that myself, but so many clients will show up and they'll go, "Okay, so here's good and here's best." And I go, "Forget it. I don't operate off of good and best. I don't operate off of plan A and plan B, because whenever we have that, we're going to achieve the plan B." And we end up living on minuscule scraps of what we truly desire to experience
Yeah.
in our lifetime. So I don't play the plan A and plan B. We go for plan A. If we don't hit plan A, we've come a heck of a lot closer to it than if we have the fallback of plan B.
Yeah. That's burning the ships.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
Burning the bridge behind.
Yeah. So there was a couple other things too. One is it was interesting when you were talking about, I think you had even mentioned school, and I think so many experienced that. I don't want to get lost here. It's called the Pygmalion effect. It's in the essence of a name calling or an idea. Like if a teacher is told like, so you're going in from fourth grade to fifth grade, the fourth grade teacher tells the fifth grade teacher, well, this kid doesn't really have much potential, but this kid does have potential. What happens is the external environment around you shifts and changes, and it impacts you. But I mean, stuff like that where, the externalization and those influences into it were pretty powerful for all the program we all experienced. I remember the junior year, how like this, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, that was just such a time where people are just, you're that kid and you're kind of coming into your own and it feels icky and sticky. There's so much influence in those arenas, and we carry that stuff. We carry the childhood traumas. I'll tell you one pattern too, because you had brought up the one case study. So I'll share one quick one with me.
But I got something to share on what you were just talking about too.
How about you go first?
Well, you were talking about that with school and things like that. I've had 2 teachers in my school days, elementary and one in middle school, that said, "There's people meant to work with their head, people meant to work with their hands, and you're just going to work with your hands." I bought into that. Wow.
Yeah.
And when I came out of high school, I got a job at a factory and I did that whole side of things. The fact that you and I are talking right now, Paul, is unrealistic. The fact that I gave a talk on prosperity in front of hundreds of ministers around the world a couple years ago, it's unrealistic that I would be doing that. The fact that I
Yeah.
was the first and only child in my family to get a college degree is unrealistic. The fact that I would go in white collar at corporate America from the ground up to a vice president of sales, leading sales teams, and then helping later on helping organizations in bankruptcy get back to profitability, it's unrealistic. It's all
Wow.
unrealistic, but it happened. And that
There.
programming we get, I just want to go back to one other thing. When we're in
Yeah. No,
school
please.
and we could start going through math problems and stuff, and we get to algebra and and above and things like that, and they give us a problem to solve. If you and I are in the same class and we're both working the same problem, and I do all the work they said to do, the way they said to do it, and everything else, that robotic training thing, and I get the right answer, I get full credit. If you, out of your creativity, can skip a few of those steps, but still get to the right answer, you get marked down because you didn't follow the process. When
Yes.
I talk about robotic conditioning, that we're trained to be robots, that's exactly what I'm talking about with that.
Yeah. That it is an incredible hit point that you just made, because I'll just use myself as an example in that sense, that I've experienced that so many times in my life. I'm like, I know the answer. I just know this is right for my business or what I'm involved with. I just know it's right. But then you get other people involved, and somehow you have to articulate it because it has to be measured, weighed, explained, and you have to be able to project the ROI and the return and all these things,
Yes.
versus I know this is right for the business. I know this is right for the group, the team, whatever that is. I know this is right in my depth of experience and everything that's influenced it. And we can focus on that expanded perspective, or I can sit here and spend all my energy explaining and articulating and putting an Excel sheet together. And that's kind of the modern version of what you just said with the algebra. And I couldn't agree with you more. And if, to just get the answer, okay, well, then it's not about the answer. It's about there's a difference there. I don't want to get lost in the
Yeah.
process and the program, but I really do believe that there's this sense of anchoring around that left brain idea of it has to be weighed or something to get a value instead of going at it, which it's right.
And that understanding is what led me to understanding all these programs and coaching and things like that, self help, whatever, that I was investing my time, efforts, resources, all that into, why they didn't work. Because it was trying to, instead of finding my pathway, it was trying to change me to fit that pathway. And we never get those
Exactly.
results that way. So that's why
No.
anybody looking for coaching or like growth or things like that, in any area, look for somebody that's going to help find your specific avenue, because it's not going to be
Yeah.
like anybody else's. And what works for you isn't going to work for anybody else. So you want to find your pathway into that,
Yeah.
what it is you want.
That's so. Actually, glad you brought up the coaching, because that is one of those things where there's over the past. I mean, I can't. I guess I can't pinpoint an actual time frame, but I mean, I guess just with the internet, there's just more exposure. Things. There's so many coaches and so many different mentors and everything else.
Yes.
There's a lot of noise out there, and I really always believed at a heart level is that a mentor, coach, or whatever is really there to help that person become the best for them,
Mm-hmm.
not the coach's version of themselves, imploring and imposing a doctrine or a thought process on it. And I personally come across many of those where it's a forcible ideology of I did this, and if you're not doing it, then you're doing it wrong. Then you get into the guilts, and I'm not doing it good enough or something. But again, I'll go back to that inherent creation energy of I know this is right. I can't explain it. I can't articulate it. I don't know how to put it into words. I just know it's right, but you're telling me it's wrong.
It's
It
right,
kind of gets me.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
right for you.
For me, yeah, and I should have just said that. I
Yeah,
agree.
no,
Yes.
because that's really important. And when I'm working with a client, I have tools that we start going through. But what I do is I don't tell them it up front, but I have them work with the tool. And
Yeah.
at some point, the client will start going, well, it doesn't work for me that way. It works a lot better this way. Is that okay? And I go, that's the purpose of what we're doing, man, is for you
Yeah.
to take these things and start practicing them to make them your own and put them in a place where they work for you.
Yeah. Is there a little bit of anatomy to that? And I almost feel like I just am flipping what I just said. I don't care for, but is there a little bit of anatomy of kind of a discovery process, a discovering the path, and then the pivot and you kind of trailblaze through that is when you're working with people?
Oh,
or
absolutely, there is. Yeah, we
yeah.
start at one point, even with the vision, because the whole SMT method is geared to bump up against that programming and patterns that's creating the limitation, that holding us back from what we truly want to experience.
Hmm.
So once we get that identified, even in the building of the vision up front with it, we start identifying those things because it's like, well, really, do I, can I ever achieve that? And so we have to go through those things. We have to do a lot of transformation to even get the vision. And then as we do that, we start taking steps. We develop systems of accelerating habits unique to the individual, and we start stepping into those. And as we do, we're bumping up against that program so that we can quickly shift that and permanently shift that, which then changes our perceptions and opens us up to greater result potentials.
Yeah. So when you were saying that too, is I thought of there was one guest I had on, Amy. I'll have to. I hate when I can't remember a guest's name, but and not give him credit for it. But she had a nice way of articulating this. Was kind of three questions of asking from a belief perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Is say there's a big, beautiful goal or idea or destination thought process you have. Is first ask yourself, is it possible? So is in this world possible? Monkeys fly? No. I can turn my business to 10 million. Yes, there are businesses out that are 10 million. So it's just a base belief.
Yeah.
Then is it possible for me? And then if you don't get past that or some version of that, then I forgot how she worded it exactly, but the way I took it was, do I have the worthiness for it or the value for it? So you ask those deeper questions. Is it possible for me? Do I have the self-worth for that? And it's a very interesting way to kind of perspective. I'm like, is it possible in this corporeal world to do this? Oh, if it is, okay, cool. Now we can go into the self, or you could even look at it as like a team. Is our team able to achieve this? Do we have the internal self-worth as a collective? So I did like the way she kind of put that together. And so it's just from a thought process to kind of provoke it. And the only thing I'd say is that when we really didn't get anything to, kind of centering the voice, but, if somebody's a meditator or they're kind of tuned with their body and stuff like that too, you kind of feel it, if you say, is it worth it? Is it possible for me? And if you get a feeling in your stomach or your shoulders or and you kind of listen to yourself and you're like, if you get that kind of feeling like, oh, maybe it isn't, then now you're like, okay, instead of just going forward, like I'm just going to go forward.
Right.
Because you're not going to see those roadblocks and you're not going, these are the things you're talking about to find a good mentor or a good coach or to help identify those spots of that. So, here, I'll hand the mic back to you because I don't want to keep going on it. I want to hear you.
Because with that is those questions you're talking about, I've run across them many times in my adulthood, and they're all embedded into the SMT. What I don't do is I don't look, is this possible based, has anybody else done it? Because to me, excuse my language, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
I have had clients who have gone from $7.5 million to over $22 million in revenue in 12 months and have maintained or grown from that over the last 7 or 8 years. I have had clients who came to me that were doing a couple $1,000s a month while they worked full time in their business, who 2 years later now are doing between $45,000 and $60,000 a week in revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And if you to talk to that person up front, they'd say that nope, that's impossible. And what happens, and this is one of the things that anybody listening to this can use, is a tool of identification. When I'm talking to somebody, one of the ways I determine if it's somebody I can help or not is when I'm sharing these true story testimonials with them. If there's like, no way, that's impossible, that can't happen, that's not somebody I can help.
Got it. They've already predetermined that they've kind of shut the door on.
One of the other things I look for is somebody that knows, I talk to a lot of people now, talk to them about, we have to be, open-minded. And I'll explain in a moment what I see with that. And as I'm talking to the person, they go, I know. And I'll tell them, being open-minded doesn't mean that we don't know anything, because we know a lot. Being open-minded is, what can I take to this and add to what I already know? Now, if somebody's in that I know position, I can't help them because they're not going to add anything to what they already know. So they have to have a willingness, or at least a desire, to want to find out what they may not know to get to where they want to get to.
just talking to a lot of people, it doesn't even take that much depth of instinct when you see somebody that really wants to master something or really wants to achieve it or learn it or understand it. They don't take it as criticism. They don't take it as like, you're telling me I'm stupid and I'm not worthy or whatever it is. There's these knee-jerk reactions of becoming defensive. But somebody who's really, they're like, okay, I really do want to explore this. You told me that that's this, and you can kind of really see the absorption quality and you can feel that. I think that's a great barometer.
And I'll tell you this, Paul, 3+ decades of doing these works, I wake up every morning and I have a decision to make. Mm-hmm. Am I the person that knows everything I need to do and I can just follow that today? Or am I the person that is open to learning from where I'm at right now? And I'll tell you, there's days when I've woke up and said, yeah, I'm that person. And those are the days I usually hit the walls the hardest. But when I wake up and I'm open-minded, I continue to grow, expand, learn more, people, things like that. And one of the things when I come across people is one of the other big ones, especially for business people, is they always want to speak on goals. I have a growth goal. I have a goal for this. I have a goal for that and everything else. And I just quit doing that for me because a goal is something I hit or miss, and that's it.
Yeah.
And typically, in business growth, things like that, once you hit it, then the goal goes higher, and you keep following that and everything else. What I work off of is visions. Because ultimately, to get to that growth, especially when it's rapid growth that we want to, experience, like unrealistic growth, to achieve that, we have to get out of the goals, which is doing, and get into the side of being. And the vision helps us and assists us and serves us in getting into that, becoming that person of that life.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So that's beautiful. And you know what you were saying too is what was resonating, at least how I was receiving in a sense, was coming up as the word patience in a sense too. But the reason is we use patience in two ways, if I may just play with this for a second. One is on those journeys, I think some of the stuff that I've experienced is like, okay, well, I want to see it. I'm not seeing it. I don't see it. And when do I wait? You get caught up like I'm just picturing this little rabbit or something kind of digging. And then there's the times where I am attuned with, I'll just say the process for lack of a better thought of it, but I know that the vision is there. I'm working and I'm doing and I'm acting and I'm enjoying and I'm feeling fulfilled within that. I don't get impatient. And there's a little bit of that contrast. And then there's the times where I kind of peek my head up and I'm like, and I'm human. We're all human. I don't believe any of us have a master by any means. I'll look up and I'll be like, damn, it's not, I don't know. It's not there. Where is it? So I guess the word patience, I'll let you kind of riff with that a little bit.
I've never been described as a patient man. I haven't. But one of the things I've learned is, again, having a vision, taking actions and seeing that vision opening up, having a place to go to. It helps, like when current situations, circumstances, experiences happen that we don't like, they feel like they're working against us and things like that. When I'm living life in that moment, those are big deals. They will cause me to want to open up that sense of urgency and dive in and things like that, which there's hardly ever any need to really do that. But when I have the vision, those things are just little speed bumps as I'm going along. Yeah. It's just what it looks like as a vision is unfolding. So now I have this dynamic vision that I'm following and I'm putting on, and I'm seeing areas of it showing up and stuff. Those speed bumps and things like that don't even really matter anymore. We get into that vision and we're seeing ourselves becoming that person of that vision, seeing that vision starting to show up in areas. It's all about the present moment at that point. It's not even about the arriving. And here's how I know that. Every vision I've had, there's been so much joy and excitement and passion and all that with the unfolding of the vision. But once I get there for a little while, I set a new vision. That's the human condition. So really, when we talk about that, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And it is. It's that journey of becoming. It's that journey of elevating and unfolding and the possibilities that are endless for us all. And picking that and then seeing that come to fruition, where the excitement, joy, fulfillment, all of that is in life. Once we get to the hilltop, we look out. A couple of days later, we forget to even look out at the beautiful scenery and stuff.
Right.
And we're ready for something else.
Yeah. And to kind of dovetail a little bit on that too, is a couple thoughts was I'm kind of picturing the gratitude along the way and the little celebrations and the recognitions. And I know personally, I've been very guilty of not having those awarenesses along the way, of not recognizing those little victories and seeing the progress. And kind of getting stuck in some of that stuff and get stuck in the muck and the mire. But that's, it takes time. And I definitely personally, I've been able to develop that better and,
Awesome.
incrementally better over time. And it really does, that's a big deal because you can get kind of lost in that.
Yeah.
And then, there was another point to it, but I kind of lost my thought because I was kind of really reflecting into the depths of that, those recognitions.
Well, like I've aligned one of the phrases that I grew up with that was programmed one way and now it's programmed another. I'm sure you've heard the phrase squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Sure.
What does that mean?
Yeah. I mean, when I hear it, I instantly think of, there's two things I think of. One is in a work setting that the complainers get the attention. The other is, if done, applied effectively in my life, aware of the environments that need a little bit of help, need a
Okay,
little bit
there
of
you go.
support.
So the squeaky wheel is broken. So even in my own life, in my client's life, my understanding of it, when I was helping companies and corporations in bankruptcy get back to profitability, we would have senior staff meetings 5 days a week, and they'd go for an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, and it would just be a big complaint session of all the stuff going wrong day after day. And I finally said, Matt, can we start talking about what's going well? And everybody would start calling me, over a few week period, people were calling me Mr. Over Optimistic and this and that and everything. And finally, one day, I just kind of lost it when I was in there. I go, I'm not doing this anymore. If one person in here can't tell me something positive going on in the mix of all this stuff, that I'm not showing up to this meeting anymore.
Yeah.
And one guy, he handled small parts, finishing a small parts, and they had like a 30% scrap rate. And so he said, yeah, we had this scrap rate, and one of my operators had this idea, and now we do it this way. We changed this, and it brought our scrap rate down into the teens. And the guy on the other side of the room goes, wait, what? Tell me that again. And he told him. He goes, we got the same problem. We're experiencing like 40% scrap plus. He went out there a couple of days later. He came back. They instituted the same change, and they brought their scrap rate down to the single digits.
Amazing.
People would still
Yeah.
call me Mr. Over Optimistic, but after the meeting, they would come in my office and hurry up and shut the door so nobody saw them in there. They'd want to talk more about this. And that's one of the ways I helped that organization to come up with a vision, develop a dynamic vision for the organization back into profitability with, commissions, shares, bonus, all that, stuff with it and everything. And within a few months from there, we had new owners that came in, dumped $12 million in operations, took them from a 3-day a month operation to a 5-day a week. And what I learned in that is I've defined my squeaky wheels as being my blessings, being my gratitudes, being the things I'm excited about. I know I don't have to put focus on those things. If I put focus on the goodness, the possibilities, the potential, the vision, those things will get taken care of with easy steps.
So that it's I think it's Lencioni that wrote about as far as leadership, about being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And there really is, there's a beautiful kind of thought process to that too, because that the essence of being in safe environment, it's much easier. It doesn't take much creativity to complain about stuff. I think humans, it's kind of this weird default thing. It's blame, do the whole like, oh, it was them, and it's bad, it's all bad. The courage comes within being those things where you stand up and creating. I like how you do that at the identification of the squeaky wheels, because, and then it's kind of I get to work on that because that's exciting. Like that means I was able to kind of put past all my garbage and all my fixations on weird shortcomings that I can't necessarily. Maybe I can change, maybe I can't change, but now I get to work on those little points, those little weak points, because that's going to make us stronger, faster. It's going to accelerate the process, and it's going to lead to those the little breakthroughs.
Absolutely. And the SMT method is built on the science and the neuroplasticity of the brain. And it's also built on the theory. It's not philosophy, it's physics, because it's all about energy flow. If our energy is flowing into the squeaky wheels being our problems, we'll always have squeaky wheels that are problems. because we're putting our focus there. We're putting energy into that. So then that's going to create more of that. When we start putting our energy, and that's what I help people do, is I help them take what's happening that they don't like and shift that into building that vision of what they do want. And so we build it in there, and then we start putting energy into there. And as we're putting energy into there, it's creating more like energy with that.
That's great. I'm going to even compare that to the healing journey or the journey of self and things like that
Yeah.
too. I know along my journey, I've been studying and introspecting for decades at this point. Some of it is you get healing fatigue, squeaky wheel fatigue, because something always feels like it's broken. Even with the internal stuff, it's always like, oh, there's another layer. Here's some childhood trauma. Here's some recent traumas. It's a essence of, and this is actually, I hate to bring this back, but I'll bring it back for a second. Sometimes that's even in the coaching world, just this endless amount of healing. I'm always healing. So therefore I'm always broken. And there's a requirement to be always broken, but that's not the case. That's the furthest thing from the truth.
Yeah.
And you can get stuck in this constant state of healing and patching.
Yeah. Because the other side of that brokenness, looking at 180 degrees, is there's so much potential expansion available
Yes. Yeah,
where we are.
exactly.
And that takes on a whole new light in how it unfolds, how we perceive it, the things that show up, and everything else. One of the great things to talk about with this is finances.
Yeah.
I've had people walk through this. We've all heard this before. The only difference between $1 and $1,000,000 is how we perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we get this vision going, and now we start changing that perception of how we see it to where we see ourselves trusted with greater amounts of prosperity and financial abundance, and things like that and stuff. And as we do that, it's like we grow into that.
I got a question in that same arena, and I think it ties back into the team, and even to the subconscious. This might be too big of a question for our time left, but there's in the team environment, there's kind of the altruistic of like I'm kind of doing it for the team. Then there's the self-absorption. I'm doing it. Everything is centric on myself, and these are different team members and stuff like that too. And sometimes it doesn't seem as if visibly or the optics as if we're talking about those subconscious programs that don't necessarily concern themselves with the emotions. I mean, well, the emotional is a good feed for it. But where I'm going with that essence is maybe it comes out to these feelings of the injustices within the teams and stuff. But I think that's really ties back into into the vulnerability and stuff. I don't think the question quite formulated. There was something there that I really had that had a depth, and I think it was that maybe the judgment of the team or the collective team as a whole. And how about this? How do you rise that in the team dynamic again, kind of the conscious collective, when you have people on this that are really fixed on the centric, and then this others are overextending themselves, living for the other, and they're not really focused on themselves, and you have these people in different placements. That's really where the question was going. It was kind of this sense of we're the chords when you're strumming the guitar were kind of just off, and everybody's got a different little bit of a chord to kind of help to unite some of those and those frequencies and align them.
Every corporation organization I work with, I go through an exercise, and it can take hours to do, but I go through an exercise. A company that helped go from bankruptcy to profitability, we saw somebody coming in dumping millions of dollars in the operation. We might not put it at 12 million, but we collectively built that vision to see that happening. When I work with businesses right now, and I work with whoever's running the sales staff, the CEO and the sales team and things, we build that vision collectively. Now, there's a difference because each individual member's drive is unique to that individual. But
Mm.
when you get the entire team focused on the same vision, the drivers don't matter.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. That's it. And I couldn't agree more with that too. I think that the definable definition, I think, is where some of that can kind of get lost, is because people want to kind of re-engineer retroactively,
Yeah.
kind of explain something, and then that's when it gets creative and convoluted in it. But it's kind of the strumming of the guitar chord in unison and the alignment of that.
Yeah. The individual drive is to be celebrated.
The celebration of, yes.
Applies to the collective vision.
Yeah. I also found too that it can help as well in a team dynamic is it's, I think there's a book for Go for No, and it's basically the idea of it's okay to kind of hit the nose, hit the roadblocks, and celebrate those. And because there can be kind of fear built around looking stupid or putting your neck out and all these things, so people kind of retract in. But it's like kind of go for the no, celebrate it. It's like, oh my gosh, because you got to know that's all right. Around the corner is a yes, or whatever version of that is, and be able to have vulnerability and joy built around some of that stuff.
So many of us live from problem to problem in the thought that I'll somehow keep going through these and eventually there won't be any problems and then I'll be at that place, at that plateau. But in
Yeah,
reality, living that way does not afford us to celebrate the successes that really lighten up the pathway, adds more excitement and things like that to what we're trying to achieve.
yeah,
So one of the things I do with every client organization I work with is we celebrate successes. Once that happened with that company, that was almost such a great proving thing for me because, there are times when I was like, man, I'm not even going to bring this stuff up anymore. I'm tired of bringing it up and getting shot down and called names and everything. But something inside of me kept pushing me to do so. And when we did that, and we started shifting that and we started spending time in the meeting talking about what was going well, the results that showed up, how quickly they showed up for everything to happen to put them back into profitability was amazing. Like people are going, I cannot believe this. I cannot believe a month ago we couldn't get a salary. We took a 50% pay cut. And now things are happening like they are as quickly as they are. And that's what it is. But so often when we're living in that mode of our programming, we don't celebrate our successes. We just go fix the next thing and fix the next thing and fix the next thing. And the mentality that we're programmed to believe is at some point there's not going to be anything left to fix and then I'll be happy. Right? I'll be happy then. I'll be happy when I retire. I'll be happy when this happens or anything else. And
yeah.
if we can't be happy right here, right now, today, we'll never be happy. I tell a lot of people before they start growing their business and things like that, we got to find happiness right now. You got to find happiness that you can even think a vision as big as you can think. Celebrate that. Be excited about that you have that capability because we can only achieve, this has been said millions of different times. We can only achieve what we believe. Henry Ford said, being from Detroit, but Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So when we start taking these things and we start looking at the successes we experience every single day of our life, and we start celebrating those, and we start looking at those as the squeaky wheels and give it some attention there, again, it's not philosophy, Paul, it's physics. We're putting energy toward greater success. So we cannot help but to experience more success.
That's beautiful. All right, man. Where can people find you, work with you? What's the best way to get a hold of you? We'll obviously we'll have all the links and stuff with our social media here, time. But what's the best way?
The easiest way to get a hold of me is you can reach out to me at coachwithjoey.com and schedule a 15-minute call with me. You and I will get on the phone, talk about whatever it is you want to talk. My goal in that conversation is to help inspire you and open up an area you might not be seeing right now. There's no sales, there's none of that or anything else. The people that I work with, I don't promote my business, it's attraction. So all you got to do is go to coachwithjoey.com, schedule a free call. We get on the phone, we get to chat for a little while and move forward from there.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining today. This was great.
Paul, incredible talking with you, man. I'm lit up.
I love it. All right, man. We'll have to do it again too. So hopefully we can get another one on the.
I'm sure you and I will keep talking.
All right, man. Thanks again.
All right.